I got to be honest with you guys. This week it was really hard in terms of finding good news to talk about, and some of the news that I put on the board is something that I usually don't even talk about it because it's not really that interesting. I mean, it might look interesting the first time you look at it, but after a couple of days, you probably are going to forget about it. And the reason why there hasn't been a lot of good news is because it's the international break. And even though MLS still has games during the international break, most of these games there wasn't really like some big headlines. Although one big headlines that did happen in one of the game was the LAFC versus RSL game, where of course LAFC won that one 2-1, but Mike Pecky decided that, you know, we only lost 2-1. At least we didn't lose 5-1, because that was his message when he basically said that, when Latif Blessing made a 5-1 kind of prediction, and he actually didn't say Blessing's name just for kind of confidential kind of protection, but yeah, when he said it was a 5-1 result, look what happened. It wasn't. It was only a 2-1 result, and I'm definitely happy with the way that is, and happy the fact that that prediction did not come true. Now, I understand that some people didn't like what Pecky did here and kind of feel like he kind of made a big of a meal out of that, and think that this was just kind of like it's kind of like a moral victory that he can take out of this game, even though they didn't get anything out of this one. But for me, I actually kind of like what Pecky did here, and I know this is gonna be I'm me kind of saying this is a little bit biased because, Mike Pecky, he is probably my favorite manager in MLS, but I feel like when I look at this, I kind of interpret it as a way that, he's giving credit to his players to be able to, work hard, and, the players that play in this game for RSL, they really put in a very hard work, and I think this is just him saying that, hey, at least for who thinks that we're gonna get destroyed 5-1, because when they look at the roster, they know that those guys are not gonna show up. Yeah, we actually did show up, and that it was only a 2-1 victory or 2-1 loss, and that hopefully this will be a way that can encourage the squad, and get a little confident that the fact that they didn't get absolutely blown out. But next up, Lucho Acosta. So there is another report say that he is potentially leaving DC United for Fenerbahce. Now, this was a report according to a Turkish paper, and I don't quite remember what was the name of that Turkish paper, but I also have heard that some people said that's paper is not really reliable in terms of reading rumors. So most likely this rumor is not going to come true. Lucho Acosta is not going to go to Fenerbahce. And, Fenerbahce, it is still a very respectable club in Europe, and is a team that does get into the Champions League and even get into the Europa League regularly, although this year they're actually not doing very well, as I have heard from a couple of Fenerbahce fans. But with him, if he does go to Fenerbahce, I think he definitely is going to get some playing time. I mean, as as I mentioned back in the off season of him going to PSG, it's definitely a dream move for him to move to a big club like PSG, but he's not going to get a lot of playing time if you're going to move to that big club and just going to be sitting on the bench a lot. So I feel like it's kind of a bit of a smart move for him to just go to a respectable club that is not going to be as big as PSG, but you're going to get playing time. And I think in this case, if Lucho Acosta decide to leave DC, and DC have already said that they're going to try to extend Lucho Acosta contract, so what I'm about to say is probably going to be just rubbish at the end of the day, but if Lucho Acosta does go to Fenerbahce, then yeah, it's definitely a good option. I mean, he want to go to Europe. He want to join a club that he's definitely going to get some playing time, and pretty much just follow what Kyle Larin did a couple of years ago when he went to the Turkish Super League and he joined Besiktas, and I think Larin has gotten some playing time when he is with Besiktas lately. Next up, Brad Friedel and his staff with players had a closed-door meeting regarding work rate in last weekend's loss against FC Cincinnati. And, I know at the end of the review, I kind of rushed a little bit in terms of talk about New England and how how much of a disaster that was against FC Cincinnati. And I don't know if I mentioned the word work rate in terms of the disaster that they had in that game against FC Cincinnati, but it was. I mean, that work rate for the Revs was just non-existent against FC Cincinnati. The goals that they concede against Cincinnati in that game was just lazy defending. Like, it was something that I usually see a lot with the Quakes, but, I don't usually see a lot with some other team. Well, especially if it's bad team. And New England, of course, right now is a really bad team. But overall, when you have this kind of situation where players have to have a closed door meeting and that the coaching staff and the front office has to get involved, that's not really a good look in terms of how your season is going to play on. And I truly think that, and I think in a couple of weeks I'm going to make a video talk about the bottom feeders and talk about their situation and who has like the worst situation right now going for this season. But I would say that New England is probably having the worst situation right now to deal with, and even worse than what the Quakes are dealing with right now, because I feel like New England, this team is just so disconnected from top to bottom. Like, it feels like this team is separated by three different parts. You got the players that is clearly not playing for Brad Friedel. They don't like the system that he's implemented. And then you got Brad Friedel that's kind of frustrated with the fact that the players are not following his instruction, and also frustrated with the front office for not spending, and also the front office, they're not spending money, and their owner, of course, are caught in a sex scandal in the off season. So yeah, this is a very bad situation for New England. And at least for the Quakes, they have a manager that of course could potentially turn it around, although the only thing that is a big problem at least the biggest problem with the Quakes right now is just the fact that the players that we have is clearly not good enough, and the front office got to start spend money to fix that. For New England, they have nothing that's going right. Like, even if they spend more money, if Brad Friedel does not implement his system and the players don't listen to his system, then yeah, it's not gonna work out so well. And it's not like Brad Friedel has a good system. It's not like how Mateus Almeida, at least I know some of the things that he's gonna do is gonna definitely work. It's just that we don't have the correct player to implement it. For Brad Friedel, yeah, it's kind of the same thing, except it's overall just a terrible system and that it just does not work in MLS. But next up, Julian Guesso contract extension talk has been halted, and this has the reason why the contract extension was the talks was halted was because Atlanta is currently kind of they're right above the cap space limit, and that they don't really have any more cap space to potentially sign a big contract for Julian Guesso to basically that he deserved with the way that he's been playing with Atlanta. And this obviously sparks a lot of debate in terms of the cap kind of space, and how people think that MLS should definitely get rid of the caps and that teams should just spend freely, and eventually not only they're going to be competing in the league but also competing for CCL. I think the cap system, I still think that MLS should kind of keep the cap system, and I think for Atlanta, this in some way, I know that they're blaming the fact that because they have a cap, they can't really keep all these players that is on a very high amount of salary and expect them to be going under the cap, and that eventually they're going to have to sacrifice a couple of players. But I also think that maybe they're not really managing the cap space very well, because I know that this team is known to get big kind of superstar kind of player, but I also think there are a couple of players that maybe they probably should have got rid of. Guys like Darlington Nagbe, for example. I know he's been okay with Atlanta, but there was an option this offseason where they could have just traded him away to Columbus, and I thought that would be a good idea, because you're going to get rid of the amount of salary that he is earning, and maybe that could be a money that you can use to re-sign Julian Gresso in terms of his contract extension, or just don't get Brek Shea for in this offseason. And I'm still cannot wrap my head around why in the world did Brek Shea actually start for Atlanta United in CCL. I mean, it feels like they didn't even hear all the warning that Vancouver fans basically give to Atlanta, that he is just he's basically the meme of MLS right now. Not only the way that he looks, but also the way that he plays. And it feels like Atlanta just didn't, they clearly didn't do any scouting in terms of that guy. So that's another player that they probably shouldn't have got it. Although I will say this, he was probably the player that was going to be the answer for Greg Garza that they lost this offseason. So eventually they're going to have to get another left back, but just not Brek Shea, man. I mean, why in the world did they decide to get him in the first place? But overall, what I'm trying to say is that they probably should have done better in terms of managing their cap space. And I understand that they're complaining the fact that the cap is the reason why they have to potentially maybe sell a couple of players. I mean, I'm pretty sure they're eventually going to get this Gresso situation figured out, but that means that they're probably going to have to maybe sell one of their player in order to stay under that cap, or else, yeah, this could be a problem for Atlanta. And you can't make Gresso a DP because they already have free DP on that team. Next up, Beitashour has been fined by Disco for violating league policy regarding hands to the face, and I actually didn't know that Steven Beitashour actually kind of violate this policy in that LAFC versus RSL game, but they just show footage of that today. And, you know, I do see that Beitashour did kind of reach onto the neck area of Salcedo. And basically what happened in that incident was Beitashour wanted to get the ball back away from Salcedo, and obviously Salcedo didn't want to give the ball to him, and then he kind of did a little bit, kind of want to like just kind of tuck him and trying to maybe get the ball away from him, and then unfortunately his hand kind of did touch the neck part of the area of Salcedo, but at the same time it didn't look very excessive. And you know, hands to the face, this rule has been very debated, as it is the case for many of the league rules that is going on. And when I see that, I mean, I get the argument, the fact that when you put your hands in an opponent face or neck, that's usually a situation where the league is going to fine you for violating that policy. But there's at least got to be some exception, and I feel like watching that footage, I feel like that may be an exception in terms of him. He just want to get the ball, but he kind of brushed a little bit off of Salcedo's neck, and it looks like it was nothing. I mean, but either way, moving on. David Accam, of course, win MLS Player of the Week, and I'm just gonna move on from that because, you know, I called it. I told you David Accam was gonna win MLS Player of the Week. I said it when he scored, when in that review when I talked about how he scored 2 goals and an assist. And usually when you have that kind of number, and unless if somebody gets a hat trick, there's no way that David Accam does not deserve Player of the Week. And especially what has gone on with him this week and how emotional it's been playing a game after his father sadly passed away. Yeah, it's absolutely unanimous in terms of voting David Accam as the Player of the Week. There's no reason why he shouldn't not be the Player of the Week this week. But yeah, moving on. The last 2 news is actually nothing related to MLS, but still I want to kind of talk about it because of the international friendly. And the first news, of course, is that Christian Pulisic has diagnosed with a quad injury after coming off in the 32nd minute in that USA versus Chile game, or Chile game. Almost said Chile there. It's actually pronounced Chile. But Yeah, he came off in the 32nd minute, and he also scored the only goal that the U.S. scored in a 1-1 draw against Chile. Let's hope it's not a very serious injury. The U.S. has really been hammered with injury lately. I heard Weston McKennie was injured, and then there was another U.S. player that I can't really think off the top of my head that is also injured. And now losing Pulisic again, who is the most important player on this team. Let's just hope it's not a very serious injury. And then finally, Miguel Almiron, of course, sees red in that friendly between Mexico versus Paraguay, which I actually went to this game, and there is going to be a Sports Hop series about that game after when I finish uploading this video. But yeah, Almiron, of course, sees red in that game after he just made an absolute ridiculous challenge on that Mexican player, and it was not only he put his stud up on the leg of that Mexican player, but he puts it all the way up near the calf area. Like, that is not only just incredibly high area to put your studs up, but that could easily ended someone's career. That could have been a very bad let breaker. And after Almiron, of course, did that, and the referee, of course, give him a red card, there was actually a mini kind of melee between both team. I believe Layun, the Mexican player, actually slapped one of the Paraguay players, and I was kind of surprised how that was not a red card, because when you decided to slap your opponent, not only that's hand to the face, but that is clearly violent contact. I mean, remember last year when Zlatan decided to slap one of the Montreal player and how that's a red card? Why is that not a red card in this incident? And I know it was during the heat of the battle, and the referee was he was trying to control the game first and didn't really see this incident, but seriously, that should have definitely been a red card. And if there was VAR in this incident, they would definitely look at VAR, and I think Layun would have sent off if there was VAR, because when you slap someone in the head, that is an automatic red card any day of the week. But yeah, either way, guys, that is pretty much it for the news of the week. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of these news, or if there's any other news that I haven't talked about that is worth me talk about and kind of replying to your comments. Let me know in the comments below. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.